Dan Bilzerian, it has come out that he is Jewish. He is Jewish. Is he? Is he? 12% Jewish, according to his recollection. I guess, I don't know if you did an ancestry, DNA test or whatever. But does that make him Jewish? It does not make him Jewish, I would say. That I would not say it is. But I'm not a rabbi. I'm not fluent in rabbinic Judaism, but I don't think that technically makes you Jewish. Judaism is a religion, being Jewish and ethnicity, but to be converted under the yoke of the law, you have to go through conversion, and it's passed through if your mother's Jewish. If your mother's Jewish, you are Jewish. That's what it is. But if you undergo conversion and you become Jewish, and your wife becomes Jewish, or if you have a child, that child is Jewish. That's how it goes. It's a big deal in how it's passed down through. And I think I going to scripture, Paul, he said, do not just obsess over genealogies. And I think that a lot of people were doing that because they're trying to fixate on the blessing. It goes through a certain people. I got to be I got to be born from this lineage and all that, and that's my identity. The cross changes everything. But I want to look into what Dan Bilzerian, he said. It's come out from a book 10 years ago that he put this out there. He made this known. But this could go for a lot of people. A lot of people might have people that are Jewish back in their ancestry. But does that technically make you Jewish? No, it does not. It does not. But actually, I do want to also clear the record of something I said the other day. This is from Nick Fuentes updates post. He says that I want to exterminate Israel guy is Jewish. Nick Fuentes reacts to Dan Bilzerian admitting he's Jewish beyond parody. But before I even show this clip, I want to say a previous video I made that I said I was kind of alluding to Dan Bilzerian, and I said he wants to exterminate Jewish people, or what he's putting forward is that I don't think there's anything out there that says he wants to exterminate Jewish people, so I mischaracterized that. He said I want to exterminate Israelis. So I guess there is a subtle difference, so I wanted to clear what I set up, but that's where, that was my bad.
Dan Bilzerian, the fuck Israel guy, the it's the Jews guy, the give me a gun, I want to go exterminate Israel guy, the guy for whom I was not anti-Semitic enough, he himself, Dan Bilzerian, is Jewish. I didn't know that. I don't think anybody knew that. Somebody found a book he wrote 10 years ago where he claims in his book that he is part Jewish. He was confronted about it all day, and finally he admitted and said, well, I'm 12% Jewish. That's not really Jewish. And I'll pull up the tweet and I'll show you.
All right, and then, so Dan Bilzerian, him and Nick have been going back at it, back and forth, all over the weekend since last Friday. Dan started this, debacle. And the way it's gone, it's kind of spun out of control. I think Nick, his kind of vision, his nuance on the whole, the argument is more clearly defined. I think Nick's got it there. But Dan, he's tweeting back at Nick, says the line I'm not going to say that, is added again. I wrote my book 4 years ago, not 10, and Hitler didn't consider 12% a Jew, but the jury is out on you. You're a Jew. No, I'm a Jew. He's a Jew. Okay. If you really were Jewish, you would be thankful for it, because Paul the Apostle said, what's the benefit of being a Jew? And Paul the Apostle, who we claim is one of the big guys in our religion and Christianity, he said, if you're Jewish, that is a good thing, much in every way. It's good to be Jewish. Jesus came to the Jews first, then to the Goyim. That's what he came. So I think this is the Goyim mindset, that we confuse things, we mix up things. We don't think maybe as clearly, that's why it gets characterized that we're just cattle, and that's wrong. That's evil. That's something that even the apostles had to go through and understand, that the Jesus coming into the world, he made it possible for all the Gentiles to be saved, to be included. They're not just Goyim anymore, but he elevated us. He made us clean. And that's why Jesus had to give that revelation to the apostle Peter, that the food, the unclean animals falling down to heaven, he said, rise, Peter, kill and eat. He's not there talking about, Peter, you a Jew, you can go eat pork now. Go eat pork, Peter. No, he's saying the Gentiles are clean. they can be accepted. They can be a part of this movement. They can be a part of the people. In Christ, Jesus makes everything equal. We are all on the same page. According to salvation, there's still a distinction. Jews can't eat pork. They're not supposed to, but that prohibition was never given to Gentiles. We're not under that. We're not under that yoke of the law. And that's kind of like what people misunderstand about all that. But Dan Bilzerian, going around this route, that he is like vehemently against Jewish people. It seems like, I don't want to just mischaracterize him, but it's hard not to say that. I did say I was wrong about saying he wants to exterminate Jews, or his ideology is that I don't have him on at least public footage of him saying that. He said, I'll give me a gun, I'll go exterminate Israelis. I guess that's the difference, because even Jewish people are not completely on board with the nation of Israel. So like some even like that are really Jewish, even like Dave Smith, they're very opposed to the state of Israel, very opposed to that. But like this whole mindset, this idea of he's a Jew, there's a Jew. No, Nick Fuentes is the jury's still out on you, kid. We're gonna find out if you're Jewish. This kind of reminds me of Nazi Germany. We got to like get a label on them. We got to put a mark on them. This person's Jewish. That person's Jewish. That's the vibe that this whole like situation, like this atmosphere is breeding, like you're a Jew. He's a Jew. It's not, being Jewish is a good thing. It is a good thing. And if you're Christian and you're not buying into this, like this idea of just that Jews are bad, and you just come to this, if you come to this like with the idea of reading the New Testament, and you are open to that, because I think we mischaracterized a lot of the stuff out of the New Testament. We've run with it in different ways than the apostles intended. But then, where this is going with Dan Bilzerian and Nick Fuentes, I think the jury is still out. Where like who's going to land on top, because there is this massive divide, this civil war that's happening within the Jewish critical movement that is happening, because that is, and I think I might be off my rocker, but I think Nick Fuentes he's seeing a little of the things that I'm saying, because it seems like the things that I say he kind of adjusts, and maybe I'm just crazy, but it seems like he's trying to define himself more and more, and be not just a Neanderthal of just one sentence lemming. The Jews did it. The Jews are evil. That's not his viewpoint. That's not his viewpoint. But he does, like, it does seem like he's bipolar. He's like schizophrenic in some things. He says one thing and he goes back on it. I think it's sometimes, I think it's just the mood that a lot of people have. You don't always feel the exact same way. And maybe that's why he contradicts himself at some points. Because he gives the impression that he's like, about Jewish people, he's like very, very antagonistic about them. But he says, I don't hate anyone. I love everyone. But that's why I almost feel that he's more dangerous, because Nick's ideology is going to win the day. Nick's ideology and viewpoint is going to outlast Dan Bilzerian. And you're going to see that Dan Bilzerian is going to go, he's going to soon be kissing the wall. He's going to be soon making asking for forgiveness to rabbis, kind of like Kanye did. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Those aren't bad things. And the popularity on the internet is that it's wrong. But I'm just saying that Nick Fuentes, I don't see him ever kissing the wall, and that becomes like, that's a matter of submission, like you're like, it's just regarding, that's their viewpoint. That's what they recognize as holy. And really, we should be all a part of the same religion. I'm not saying Islam, but I'm saying Jews and Christians should be a part of the same religion and the ideology. There's just this massive schism that has happened, and that's the thing that is, it's what's been happening in the last 2,000 years. And if you really want to go to find out why it all happened, you have to go back to the 1st century, not the 4th century. You got to go back to the 1st century and see why even all the apostles are Jewish. But they understood they were opposed to the Jews who were unbelievers. And they're unbelievers as in unbelievers of the Messiah. So this is Dan Bilzerian coming out and saying he's 12% Jewish, which he like that part of his lineage. You might have some of that in your background. I might have, but that doesn't technically make you Jewish. It's just this. It's getting so confusing because I think we goyim we confuse a lot of things. If we had the connection with the people, the Jewish people, that's why the Gentiles, we got the Messiah. We have their Messiah. He is here, and we've embraced him. But the Jews who have like what kind of Catholics they have priests. They've created priests, almost a Judaism light version of religion. Those actual things that like kind of Catholics in a lot of ways in the church are kind of just putting on their dad's shoes and pretending to be this. They're not that. The Jewish people are that. They're the ones who were given the interpretation of the law, interpretation of the scriptures. The apostles are the ones who were Jewish, who were given what you bind and loose. Jesus gave them that authority because the Jews always had that. The Jews had the ability to determine how to interpret the law, how to interpret the rightly carrying out the commandments. But it's like a lot of the people in the Gentile side of the church, the people of God, we're taking the things on that aren't really belonging to us. And I think that's why there's so much confusion right now. And the only thing that's going to bring us together is if when Israel embraces the Messiah and how that all plays out. I believe that will happen. I don't know about you, but I believe it will happen. But let me know what you think. I don't think this disqualifies Dan Bilzerian for anything. And I don't think he should back away from this. But you're not Jewish, man. You're not Jewish. And don't let this thing, because you got 12% in your lineage, that makes you Jewish. It's not. You know, there's if you want to find out if you're really Jewish, go to a rabbi. If your mother's Jewish and you're born that way, you're Jewish. And then you can, if you want to undergo conversion, which if you're a Gentile, what we have been given from the apostles is don't do that. If you're Gentile, you remain Gentile. If you're Jew, you remain Jew. I guess there are maybe caveats like of why you might convert for some reason, but Paul was very strong on that. Don't undergo circumcision, otherwise you are under the entire yoke of the law, which you are. Jews are under the entire yoke of the law, which Gentiles are not in the same way. All right, we'll leave it at that. Let me know what you think. Sometimes I come out a little bit confusing. I'm not trying to be. I'm just, rapid fire at times. We'll leave it at that. Have a good Wednesday. See y'all.